Arizona, 59. We're sort of jumping around. Tucson, Arizona. I have not been on the property 30 minutes when I am lying on a massage table in a softly lit, frangipani-scented room with a person named Trevor towering over me. I can see, he says, that you are doing a lot of spiritual work because look how far you are out in your hair. His accent is vaguely South African, and he has the most impressive unibrow I've ever seen. I do not read poetry, Trevor says, because I live poetry. He picks my feet up and lets them fall back to the table. May I ask you, he says, why the lower half of your body is perpetually standing in ice-cold water? He means energetically, of course, because the room is warm and my legs are dry. And what happened here, he asks, not waiting for an answer. He has his hand on my leg at the exact place where, when I was 4 years old, my father threw me so hard against a big oak wardrobe that I broke my femur. The bone healed 40 years ago. I was casted from the tip of my toes to my armpits for months. But Trevor is not the first healer to be able to see what happened. My father, I begin. I am not afraid of your pain, Trevor says. I am not afraid of your grief. I am not afraid of your terror. You want to know why I'm not afraid of your terror? I nod. I am not afraid of your terror because I have gone inside the monster, and inside the monster is pure wonder. Somewhere in this building, my friend Willow, who I have come to Canyon Ranch with, is getting a nice, simple lavender scrub and an herbal. Willow looked through the catalog, thought, yeah, the first night, maybe a nice herbal wrap after all that travel. Pamela, Trevor says, will you tell me your father's name so that I may ask him to excuse himself from the lower half of your body? Yes, I say, and I do. Sebastian, Trevor says. Sebastian, you must get out of there, Sebastian, he says. This does not belong to you. He has his eyes closed and his hands tight around my ankles. No, Sebastian, he says more forcefully now, there are no options. We stay like that for an excruciating amount of time. Then he folds my hands across my chest and covers them with his. If you could have only one thing, he says, would you choose peace or ecstasy? Ecstasy, I think, though I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to say peace. Peace is an illusion, Trevor says. I am in the ecstasy nearly all the time now, even when I sleep. I think of the composer's lonely bedroom, the terrible black sheets, the clock radio projecting blood-red digits onto the ceiling, his bald head a glinting Cabernet color like someone already dead, the musical he wrote where all the gorillas sang, despite what he is, he's alive. Pamela, Trevor says, slapping the bottom of my feet with his palms. Yes, sir, I say, out of habit. He's got my wrists now, is stretching them back over my head. No one has ever called me Pamela except my father. You have two glasses, Trevor says. One is completely full and one is completely empty. In which glass is stillness possible? The full one, I say. The questions are getting easier. Trevor now has his powerful thumbs wrapped almost completely around my uppermost vertebra. You can get to stillness through ecstasy, he says, but you can't get to ecstasy through stillness. I think about all the ways the language of the New Age is custom-made for terrorism. I think about when a pink mouth opened in a white sky over Davis and I saw for the second time the cupped waiting hands. When one of the doing lines in your life intersects with the circle of your now, Trevor says, what happens? It has to bend, I say, confident now. It bends and eventually becomes a circle. Precisely, he says, and releases his death grip on my neck. This is, I'll do two more. This is 111, Trenton, New Jersey. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that my back hurts so much because when I was 4, and in my 3/4 body cast, my mother found it easiest to carry me around upside down like a monkey, using the plaster bar the doctors had fashioned between my knees to keep them, for 3.5 months, the correct distance apart. And let's say she did just that, until my second to last appointment when the orthopedic surgeon said, "You haven't been carrying her around by this bar, have you?" And my mother shot one quick glance at my father and said, "Of course not, no." And it became a funny story the two of them liked to tell together to friends over a couple of drinks. And let's say that when their friends asked, as of course they would, how in the name of heaven a 4-year-old breaks her femur, they said that I had somehow managed to pull the giant wardrobe over onto myself. Except instead of wardrobe, they would have said credenza, because it would have made us sound richer than we were. I still don't see how it would make me feel any better to think of the pain in my hip and spine as anything other than my most loyal and valuable companion. The continuous non-voice in my ear that says, "You got out alive and you still get to go." No two people who have ever lived love to travel more than my mother and father. They gave that love in their fashion to me. And I'll end up with Bend, Oregon, where I'll be later this week. Oh, here's 80. It's only one sentence. 80, Portland, Oregon. Rick says, "Pam, if everybody deserved a down pillow, there wouldn't be any more birds." Okay. This is 72, Bend, Oregon. In my dream, one guy who is in charge of a monkey is trying to explain to the other guy how difficult it is to manage the monkey's needs. The monkey has to be placated all the time, he says. The monkey has to be happy or there is major hell to pay. As he says this, the monkey runs around the room, up to the curtain rod, down to the windowsill, across the floor, and up to the curtain rod again. The other man listens thoughtfully, as a therapist would, offers advice that I understand to be both sage and kind. Then the session is over, and the first man says, "Okay, let's go." And the monkey reaches up and grabs him around the neck, the way a child would, and wraps his monkey feet around the man's waist, and the man cradles him quite lovingly, I think, and closes the door behind him. The other man sits in the vacated room for a moment, stands, and then he says, "Let's go." And a big furry rat scurries out from the bathroom, jumps up and grabs him around the neck, just as the monkey grabbed the first man, and they walk out of the office together. It is Nora's knock on the door that wakes me so fast I remember all of it. She is here to take me to the place that serves Stumptown coffee. And there I am, stumbling around in the shirt I wore the day before, my unhooked bra dangling off my right elbow, saying, "You see how it was, don't you? The other guy had a rat." The first words Nora ever said to me were, "Robbie Robertson or Rick Danko?" And because there is only one answer to that question, I knew we would be friends for life. When I arrived in Bend yesterday, she picked me up at the airport. At 4 that morning in Boulder, my cell phone had splashed into the toilet while I was drying my hair, but I didn't really roast it until I tried to turn it on before it was all the way dry. At SFO, I sent an email to Fenton the Human that said I was pretty sure Rick had broken up with me for good this time, but by the time I got to Oregon, I told Nora that I knew Rick was difficult, but I was too, and you could talk all day, psychology up one side and pheromones down the other, but there was nobody alive who could help who they loved. Driving up the mountain in Nora's Prius, I borrowed her cell phone to check my messages, but she had forgotten she was hooked up to Bluetooth, and when I hit the 7 key, there was Rick's sad Texas voice filling the car, saying he was sorry, that he wanted more than anything for us to keep trying, that I was a mighty fine gal. "Welcome to my relationship," I said to Nora, who knew a thing or two about difficult men, and when we got to the hotel and saw the flowers, I said, "I don't think Rick is the kind of guy who really sends flowers." And the lady behind the desk said, "Well, it seems he knew how." Right before Mavis Staples sang "I'll Take You There," she kicked off her stilettos and said, "I can dance better without these." And I thought about all of us, Cinder and Mackenzie, Nora and Haley and Practical Karen, dancing around my kitchen with our morning lattes. I woke this morning with something returned to my chest and made a list of things to be happy about that included Nora was making bouillabaisse because 7 women were coming from 4 states to eat it, and Rick left another message that said he was off to get a clippings, a haircut, and anyone who has no monkey probably has a rat, and everybody who said I'd end up bitter turned out to be mistaken anyway. A week after the airport fight, Janine said, well, you know I love you, but what I really want to say is that we love you, all of us. And she stretched her arms out wide to include the whole empty room. That ferry came in just for you, Fenton the human said last week in Seattle, even though we were standing next to one of the world's busiest ferry terminals, and watching the late sun make mercury on the surface of the water, seeing the clouds lift off the top of the Olympics, smelling Fenton's cologne, mixed with chowder and diesel, sound of the horn, sound of the thrusters. I had to admit he was right. Thanks.